I'll be joined by two journalists who've reported extensively from the region, MSNBC's Ali Velshi and former NPR correspondent Deborah Amos. Plus, your calls next time on The Middle. Tonight at 9 p.m. on 90.1 WABE.
It's Paula Poundstone. Appreciate this station and want to support it? Donate your car and they'll pick it up contact-free. Yep. I don't know if they've trained a bunch of cats to drive or what, but it works. Here's how.
Just go online at wabe.org/car donation.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. There's so much news these days it can be hard to keep up, and many of those stories are breaking in the middle of the day. Here and Now covers the news when you need it, so you're in the know.
This is member-funded WABE 90.1 FM and HD1 Atlanta, streaming on the WABE app, on your smart speaker, and at WABE.org.
WABE.
Support for WABE comes from Community Foundation.
From WABE in Atlanta, this is Closer Look. I'm Rose Scott. Go ahead and clap. No. There's no ego involved here, right? And we're live for this month's coffee conversation in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. Today we are in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood inside, wait for it, Omni Coffee and Eggs. I love doing that. Located at 261 Peter Street Southwest in Atlanta, and as we do with all our coffee conversations, the topics are related to the community and quality of life. And today, I'm going to get in a little trouble because I already got a couple of emails. We're exploring how Atlanta is developing as a 21st century, from economic mobility, jobs, all that. But here's the question. Atlanta does attract a lot of new businesses and newcomers, right? But is it still a place to thrive for natives? And I'm having this conversation because I had someone tell me, Rose, I'm from Atlanta, but I feel like it's not for me anymore. It's for newcomers. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But as we always do with every coffee conversation, we begin with the folks behind the coffee shop and more. This is very unique and different. I want to go ahead and bring in Chris Floyd, who is Chief Strategy Officer for Omni Coffee and Eggs. Welcome.
Welcome to the kingdom.
Now, this is a very unique space. First of all, thank you for allowing us to come in here because I must say, this theme is kind of like Bridgerton meets Outcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a whole lot going on. I love it. Who is the mastermind behind this? And since you only one that's here, you should go ahead and take credit for it.
That would be unfair for me to do that because there are a lot of hands that took part in this being able to even become possible. A good friend of mine, Jay, called me about 3 years ago and was like, "Hey man, I got this idea for a coffee shop." And I said, okay, that sounds cool, nice, good for you, right? And then he proceeded to just lay it all out and give me the vision and the forecast of being able to like really revolutionize the way people consume their coffee on a day-to-day basis.
So let's talk about that. Well, first of all, the building was built in 1897.
Correct.
Did you all get all the permits? Because there are certain things you can do to buildings, and y'all got the hammering and sawing and cutting.
We got excited. I'm just leave it at that. We got real excited and went to work.
The concept.
Right.
It is unique.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, talk about it.
You know, I'll start with this. First of all, Jay doesn't drink coffee, so that's the irony of all of this, right? I've known him since middle school, never seen a guy drink a cup of coffee, and he comes up with a coffee idea. So just the irony of that in itself is one thing. But then, you know, when we started getting to it, we started to see that most people hadn't really experienced coffee in its true form, you know? And so we're on a quest to get the 10 rarest coffee beans from around the world and bring them here.
The 10 rarest coffee beans in the world.
Yes.
Your house coffee is an Ethiopian blend, correct?
Yes, it's what's considered a grade 1 specialty grade coffee. And for most people like myself, before I got into this, I probably never would have even tasted such type of beverage. But, you know, when we started peeling back the layers, we started realizing that people love caffeine, not necessarily coffee, but if we could give them the true essence of what it really tastes like, they probably like open up their mind to like what this stuff's supposed to be. I grew up on coffee out of a can. You understand?
You poor man.
We drank coffee out of a can. That's how my granddaddy drank coffee. So like being able to like actually taste what it's really supposed to taste like, it's mind blowing. We wanted to give that to people and give them some culturally relevant syrups. Most of the shops we know
Culturally relevant syrups.
Yeah. So we're originally from South
like
Carolina.
Afro Sheen syrup or something like that.
It's just stuff we grew up with, and so we looked across the landscape, and most places had like caramel, hazelnut, French vanilla, and that's fine, right? But I've never had a hazelnut souffle, right? I never grew up with a caramel pie, and so we said, so why do we put it in our coffee?
Fair.
Right? And so from there, we came up with the syrups and our flavors like sweet potato pie, carrot cake, tiramisu, dolce apple spice, right? And when we put that together with a royal theme and a royal atmosphere, it creates Omni.
You don't have like a chitlin latte back there, do you?
Maybe next year.
And don't send me email, Rose, all black people don't eat chitlin. I know that. I'm just saying, when you talk about the culture, I got to go there, right?
Yeah.
But the dress, because it's the time period is
right.
16th, 17th century here. Help me out.
16th, 17th, little of 18th. So coffee shops used to be reserved for like these intellectuals to come and have these very enlightened conversations. And so when we decided to do the true essence of coffee, we wanted to do the true essence of the actual coffee shop, right? And so our shop is an ode to what it started as. It's where people like yourself, the creatives, right? You come and you become inspired. And so if you look across our space, there's all different types of inspirational quotes, and we call it the sixth and seventh sense, a spiritual aspect of what comes with, innovation.
It has a sort of a Shakespearean or that sort of time period, and then you have folks that dress up. You were kind enough to let me change clothes, and I there was a wig in there, Chris. I'm not trying to put your business out there, but there was a wig, and I was like, what's Chris got going on here? It's cool, and nothing wrong with that, but it was like a period wig. So you dress up like...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have fun with it, The whole point of this is like to show people where this came from and what it is. And so we would dress up and do like a 2-3 hour show. We called it flight school. And we take people through the history and the origins. Like, we didn't know coffee came from Ethiopia. I thought it came from Colombia,
I can understand that.
And so when we peel back the layers and we find out where it's from, how it's created, and then how it's traveled through the coffee trade, we'd like to dress up and have fun and make it a show.
Why Castleberry Hill neighborhood in this building? And you could have got a building that you guys put a lot of work into this. It's an old building.
Yes, absolutely. I think it called us, so to speak, because I think he had looked at another location on this block maybe a year or two before, and things didn't kind of work out. And then when this one became available, just the way it happened was so organic. How things kind of sometimes take you instead of you taking it. I think this building took us. And in a sense, it's kind of encapsulated everything that we are in terms of that royal and regal.
Royal and regal, I love it. In fact, the room that we're in, this used to be stables for horses, right?
Yeah, so you can still see the archways right behind you, and up on that wall, when you head out, you'll see the ledgers from them doing business over 100. It's crazy that people.
So those are people who their families now owe money to the feed and feed. It was like a feed store, right?
Yes.
So folks, if you check this out, there are the actual ledgers that they found in this building, and there's some names on there. If I found out your family's still in this neighborhood and your name on that list, you should get the money, right?
Account is suspended currently. So
let's talk about the menu, because I saw oxtails on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Chef Eddie curated our original menu, who you had a chance to meet earlier, and Eddie's very modern, I guess you'd say. A lot of layers in his dishes. The reason being is we call ourselves a cafe, right? We're not a cafe. We're not a restaurant. We're a cafe, right?
Look at you.
Most restaurants, they have really good food, but maybe subpar coffee. And a lot of coffee shops have good coffee, but they may not have the best quality in terms of food. And
you really putting it out there, Chris.
Look, it took us a year and a half to open this. So, we kind of developed all of these ideas in that time frame. But he developed our menu with all of these like very sultry and savory dishes, you know, with a lot of different layers and a lot of different ingredients. Because we would be remiss if we gave you, hey, here's the best coffee in the world. Oh, and here's a
hard biscuit.
There you go.
Right.
There
I
you
got
go.
How has it been in terms of operating something this unique? I've talked to so many coffee shop owners, and they've said, Rose, you don't go into this to make money. It is a tough business, and now we're seeing with the new versions of coffee shops, they have to be something else. You have to have an event space, maybe, or you have to be able to present something more to the community, unless it's just a small pop-up where people are going to get their coffee and leave. But this the whole idea of owning a coffee, or what'd you call it, a cafeteria?
A cafe.
Cafe. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of those things. So we have our cafe right here, but then we also have our coffee company, right, where we have our own beans, and we wholesale and distribute our own syrups, and we lease out machines and all of those things that go along with it. So I think you have to be definitely dynamic in terms of being flexible with what you're offering.
The beans that you get, you have Ethiopia. You said there were some 10 total.
Yeah, we got a hot list.
You got a hot list?
Yes.
Are you going to share some of that hot list?
I'll share some of the countries.
Okay.
Okay. Indonesia,
All right.
Kenya, Jamaica, of course Colombia. We'll go back to Colombia. I'll leave it at that.
Now, the journalist in me wants to know, in terms of doing business with these nations and the coffee growers, that there's an equal. Everybody's getting paid what they should.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So we have what we call our triple OCE, right? And so I appreciate everybody from being here today, because every time a customer buys a bread, egg, and a coffee dish together, that would be like a bacon, egg, and cheese and a coffee. 5% of those proceeds go back to the farmers.
Okay.
And so $50 will send a kid to school for a semester in Ethiopia.
Really?
You know, so at the end of the year, being able to give that back, that's a big portion of what we do. Being able to do that because they created this for us. Without them, there's no shop.
Absolutely.
You know? So being able to take care of those folks where maybe sometimes they may have been marginalized, they may not be in a comfy country like America, to be able to go back and contribute is huge.
This is the part of the conversation, Chris, where we shift because, again, it's not about me, but every coffee shop does, in honor of me, they come up with a coffee.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying that, you know, they come up with a coffee for me.
Yes.
You know, because it's not about me,
Yes.
but it's a coffee for me.
Okay.
What you got today?
The Lady Rose. And I've got our staff bringing that out.
Okay, what is in
for
the
you.
Lady Rose?
The Lady Rose consists
Sounds like a
of...
Netflix series. The Lady Rose.
I mean, we could spin that thing on off, but no. What's in it is, ironically, our Lord of Castleberry syrup. That is a white chocolate strawberry mocha with Ethiopian coffee, and we're a dairy-free company, so that's oat milk. We use oat milk base for all of our lattes and cappuccinos. So.
And that is a special for today?
That's yours.
That's
just
mine?
that's just nobody else in the building is gonna get a Lady Rose except for you today.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I may
Yes.
get 4. Okay.
4. I mean, your deal. You can.
How is it in this neighborhood? There are a lot of small businesses here. We've seen Peter Street. We've seen this neighborhood. I moved here in 1996. I've seen this neighborhood change.
Yeah.
Ebb and flow. We've seen this. How has it been for you all?
It's been awesome. Like, honestly, I can't think of a better place to, like, put our flag in the ground, so to speak. Jay says that all the time. But to put our stamp on what we're doing then in Castleberry. I mean, it's a historic neighborhood, historic district, and then it's such a melting pot of different kinds of people. You know, it's like very urban on one end, it's very artsy on one end, and then on right up the street you have like Mercedes-Benz Stadium in downtown, and I mean, like, I get any and everybody coming in here over the course of a day. So it's just like being able to touch all those people through what we're doing. I mean, it's ministry for us at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, being able to touch all those different kinds of people over the course of the day is cool.
In terms of parking?
Okay. Elephant in the room.
Yeah. I know people like, Rose, I love you, but I almost went home.
Yeah.
It's a little...
I mean, it's
challenging.
Yes, it absolutely is. And I, you know, the thing about this neighborhood is you have your residents. You have a lot of residents in this neighborhood, right? Then you have your businesses in a very confined space. And we've worked with city council. We've worked with the president of the neighborhood dream, to try to figure out what we can do to make it happen, because at the end of the day, we all have to coexist, you know, and there's not any more real estate that's going to be created in this neighborhood. And so, yes, it is. It is a challenge. We've come up with several different concepts and ideas for how to make it work. And honestly, I'll say this. I think it will. I think it will, because of what's coming to this area in the next 12 to 24 months. I think we'll be put in a position where, you know, if the neighborhood wants to grow, we'll make it happen.
In terms of where you see this neighborhood going and it's growing, do you have some concerns that small businesses may have a challenge trying to sustain?
No, I think it's what you make it, you know. As a person in business, I mean, you're always looking for opportunities to garner more traffic your way. And because the city of Atlanta is doing that with, i.e. the World Cup that's coming, and the developments that are coming, I mean, you can't ask for more. I think ultimately it's up to you to be able to capitalize on those things and not see yourself as so much a small business owner, but just a business owner in general.
But there are some things that business owners, they can't control. I mean,
Correct.
the taxes, I mean,
Correct.
increases in rents, and we know what it's like for on the housing side for commercial as well. You know, if you all own this building, right? Do you own
Correct.
the building? See, everybody don't own their building. That's different. So
Yes.
you can't raise the rent on yourself.
I mean, we could. But
Good. But you know, this is how big is 18,000?
yeah, 18,000 square feet.
Woo!
Yeah. Is that a question?
I'm just like, wow. No wonder you have events in here. You had a graduation party a couple of nights ago.
Yeah.
Are you making money, Chris?
I think we'll look at the tax ledger, and I don't want to say too much. You know, I don't know who's here today. If if the IRS is here today, so be careful with what I say up here.
But all this fits into the theme that we're going to talk about today, which, you know, Atlanta is thriving. We know about from major development, and really we know that community drives the city. You know, our guest in our next panel will attest to that. Courtney English, who grew up here, he's a native here. You know, and I've heard people say, yeah, people come to Atlanta and it's great for them, but for the natives here, for people who have helped build Atlanta into what it is, you know, can we survive? That's the same question for small business owners, you know?
I think it's adaptability, you know, and you have to be malleable in terms of being flexible to how you evolve. You know, it's coming. You know, whether you want it to or whether you don't want it to, it's coming. And I think we just have to be open-minded to what your capabilities are to be able to capitalize on that, because it's coming one way or the other.
As a small business owner, and now, this is considered a small business in a sense.
Technically, on paper, yes.
So what more could you ask from the city, or, you know, this district, because it's a historic district, which has some different optics to what resources are available for you?
Correct. What more could we ask from the city?
Yeah, or just in general.
Parking.
Oh, Courtney.
Parking. But I mean, you know, I got to be honest. I can't complain. I mean, the city has lots of opportunities through their like their Office of Procurement that just switched over, where they're open to doing business with whoever and wherever. And I think it's up to you to just capitalize and then execute once you get those opportunities, because, you know, once somebody gives you a chance, you can't ask for anything more than that. And when people give us a chance, we try to make sure that it's a royal affair, you know, which is our whole concept and what we came here for in the beginning anyway.
I have a question from a listener who wants to know, what is the must-have item on the menu?
Omni Bowl, without a question.
Omni Bowl?
Omni Bowl, because Chef Eddie created that.
What's in the Omni Bowl?
The Omni Bowl has vegan sausage, for starters, potatoes, an egg, bacon. You can get turkey or pork, their homemade Omni Gold sauce with onions and peppers. I crush about one a day.
Really?
Yes.
It's that good, huh?
That's our best seller. You know, that's what people come here for, the Omni Bowl. And then on the coffee side, our Lord Omni the Magnificent. That's our sweet potato latte. Tastes just like grandma's house.
Sweet potato latte.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Chris, where do you see, or what do you hope Omni Coffee and Eggs will be? Let's say, I used to ask people 5 years. What do you say, 2 years?
2 years from now, multi-state, taking over a region.
Taking over a region?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is our concept is elaborate but yet simple in the same time. And so if we can get space to operate, I mean, we can just set up shop any and everywhere. And then with our coffee company, our e-commerce, the platform that backs that, the marketing that goes along with that, we're able to expand our reach everywhere, you know?
I have a question from a listener that says, how do you know what's a good cup of coffee?
Well, it starts with the nose, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like wine in a sense, right?
Really?
Wine has a sommelier, coffee has
Yeah.
a Q grader. And it starts at the nose. What do I smell? What kind of aromatics is it giving off? And then I look at acidity, right? Is it bitter
Now, Chris,
to the
is the
taste?
average person gonna do that?
When they come here, we educate them, you know.
I got you.
But, going back to my previous point, the guy who started this doesn't drink coffee.
Yeah.
Right? So for him to be able to have a cup of coffee every day, it's got to be quality stuff, right? And so by being able to create something, whether it's with the syrups or without it, we get full participation because the coffee drinker likes it because it's specialty grade coffee. Yeah. The non-coffee drinker likes it because it's sweet. So everybody gets something they want when they come to Omni Coffee and Eggs.
You're a roaster. You work with a local roaster as well?
Yes, absolutely. And, man, he's incredible. He's actually Ethiopian. And these beans come from his grandfather's farm. So when I tell you we're fortunate enough and we couldn't have asked for a better situation with the people we've met since we've started this, you can't make it up.
I feel like we need to have a WABE documentary where we go with you to Ethiopia to this. Wouldn't that be great? Would y'all like to go?
Come on.
I believe one of my colleagues is here. Aisha, could you work on that, please?
Where's Aisha?
She's somewhere else. She's trying to hide. There she is back there. So, yeah, we'll get a group of people. We'll come to Ethiopia. We'll learn about the coffee bean and his grandfather's farm. That's a great story, Chris.
It is. It's actually a cherry. Most people don't even know that.
It's a cherry?
So if you look at the front of our building, there are a bunch of cherries, right, falling from someone's hands. That's coffee. Coffee's inside of those cherries. So it's amazing.
Did y'all know that?
See what happens when you come in?
Thank you so much. Chris Floyd, Chief Strategy Officer, Omni Coffee and Eggs.
I got your drink coming.
Chris, thank you so much for hosting us. Thank you for educating me, because now I feel like I want to just go learn more about coffee.
Well, you got your Lady Rose on the way.
I appreciate it. Thank you, brother. I appreciate
you.
it. All right. Stay tuned. There's more coffee conversations. When we come back and we ask the question, is Atlanta still for natives or just newcomers? So there's more coffee conversations after this.
Support for WABE comes from Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, a proud sponsor of Coffee Conversations. Rose Scott and Closer Looks Coffee Conversations is broadcast live today from 1 to 2 p.m. from Omni Coffee and Eggs, where Rose discusses important community issues and matters that matter most. Thank you for listening to Closer Looks Coffee Conversations, sponsored by the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. Support for WABE comes from Georgia Commute Options. You can go your way and get rewarded, earn prizes, gift cards, and other exclusive perks when you switch from driving alone to a greener trip. More at mygco.com. And from Fernbank Museum. Fernbank's summer adventures feature nature, dinosaurs, science, and art. New for summer, a mirror maze reveals patterns in nature through immersive and interactive experiences. More exhibits, films, and events available at fernbankmuseum.org.
Friday night from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. is a good time to be with us here at WABE because that's time for blues classics. Great blues music. If you haven't heard it before, listen this time, okay? Join us Friday night. I'm H. Johnson. I'll be hosting here at WABE.
There are Now brings you the latest news from around the country.
I have a life brimming with people who've made different choices, and I've never tried in my personal life to impose my choices on them.
Seems to me that people are being responsible, and yet it keeps spreading.
I've been door knocking and making phone calls and working in offices. I'm willing to do anything for this man.
Hear the latest news as it develops on the next Here and Now from NPR News. This afternoon at 3 on 90.1 WABE.
Closer Look continues from WABE in Atlanta. I'm Rose Scott as we are live for this month's Coffee Conversation, made possible due to a partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. And this time we're in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood, inside, yes, Omni Coffee and Eggs, located on Peter Street in the heart of downtown Atlanta. Now, I was told by Daniel, I'm going to put him on the spot. Daniel said technically it's not downtown Atlanta, Rose. Is this downtown Atlanta? Ooh, maybe Daniel was right. Y'all get, well, and you know, I get it because folks get very, I know y'all getting y'all feelings about your neighborhood, so technically, so what part of town is this?
Castleberry.
Castleberry. Got Courtney, Castleberry.
I mean,
well, listen,
but real estate developers would say south of north, so you know.
Ah, we'll get to that. Now, something I quickly learned when I moved to this city back in 1996 is that those that are born and raised here are very proud of being a native. I know that, and I get it, I understand it. Of course, 1996, the Olympic Games are here, and then there's this transformation, right? Make no mistake, Atlanta began to attract more businesses, big and small. Population increased in the city and surrounding counties. But today we're asking a question, and it came from someone I was talking to, and they said, you know, Rose, I feel like I'm a native, Atlanta is no longer for me, but it's for newcomers. We know Atlanta is this world-class city, right? So I want to talk about it with our guests. First up, Tangi Allen, co-founder of Raising Expectations, Winona Satcher, who is founder of Maker Studio, Courtney English, who is the Chief Policy Officer for the City of Atlanta. Welcome to you all.
Good morning.
I love asking this question, and I'm going to start with you, Winona. What is Atlanta's identity? Atlanta's identity?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll give you a narrative. So, was recently talking to some officials last year about the work that we do with building affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting next to Big Gip of Goody Mob.
Yeah.
That's number one. And, and someone was talking to me about, you know, how can we support what you're doing? How can we support the work that you're doing to create more housing affordability? And Big Gip said, write her a check. Mm-hmm. That's at old Atlanta. Mm-hmm. It is about a collective mindset where when you win, we all win, but that's steeped in not just events or sports events, it's steeped in actually policy. It's steeped in how we vote. It's steeped in community and advocacy. And so for me, it is literally the political body of collective movement forward versus just an individual approach to what I think the collective should be, if that makes sense.
I got you. All right.
So to me, that's old Atlanta.
That's old
and
Atlanta.
I'm born and raised here, so that was a good reminder that there's still a little bit of that left.
Ah, Courtney, what is Atlanta's identity? That is deep. You got a lot to follow up there.
No, that was deep. That was definitely old Atlanta, and that was a moving spirit. I'm getting charged up over here. Born and raised in the city, Douglas High School to be exact. Amen. But you know, I think Atlanta has always been defined, really, is a tale of two cities. We have incredible pride in the city we call home. You know, we love our high schools, we love our people, we love our neighborhoods, we love each other. We just love the thing that we know Atlanta. It's incredible for culture, it's incredible for business, and simultaneously, we have some very serious challenges that face natives, that face African Americans specifically, widest wage gap in the country, lowest level of economic mobility, one of the highest rates of child poverty. And the truth and the hope of that is is what to me defines Atlanta and how we reconcile those two things. And so the challenge, I think, for us is how we close those equity gaps and ensure that natives can grow up here and thrive and work in all the wonderful things and all the wonderful places that Atlanta has started to attract. I mean, we are home to the world's busiest airport, the 1996 Olympics, World Cup, so on and so forth, and then all that bad stuff I just talked about, right? And so there's some hope in that, and there's some truth in those negative stats. And when we bring those two things together, I think that's the challenge of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
And Courtney, that also goes back to what Maynard Jackson talked about. I mean, we're celebrating 50 years of Maynard Jackson.
The other Atlanta,
The other Atlanta,
yeah.
Right, the other side of the tracks.
Yes.
Tangi, what is Atlanta's identity?
For me, I think to piggyback on what Courtney just shared is to have the leadership, to have the discernment, to understand that you have to be honest with yourself about the realities here, but also be hopeful. And that's a part of raising expectations work. We believe and delve in the possibilities of our young people. So when I think about Atlanta Spirit, I think about one of the cluster schools that's a part of the geographic region that we support with raising expectations, and that's Washington Cluster. This year, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary. And when I say I have enormous pride when I go to graduation, and I see so many classes of these beautiful and handsome faces of people that are just there to laud our kids' academic acumen. So being home to that, home to the largest consortium of trained African-American minds internationally, being a part of the geographical region, which is a bedrock of the civil rights movement. There's so much outside of lemon pepper wet wings to be proud of when it comes to Atlanta, or outside of our football team or our baseball teams. There's so much Black intelligentsia here that we can celebrate and laud, and for people that our kids can aspire to be at one point in time.
So based on everything you all have said, it sounds like a lot of what Atlanta's identity, and I've said this personally for full disclosure, I think Atlanta's identity is what it can be.
Absolutely.
There's hope in that. And we have, and then look, every city grapples with this, but for a city like Atlanta, because we've been hearing it's a world-class city, city too busy to hate, you know, Atlanta influences everything. So now let's get to how we got here. Through it went on to you work in affordable housing.
Yes.
And I know that that's a bucket that no one has been able to come up with the perfect solution.
Sure.
But to be fair, I think Atlanta is...
No.
Oh, okay. Well, Courtney,
I mean, we're
I'll let
working
Courtney
on it.
talk, because Courtney may have the perfect
We're
solution.
working on it.
All right. Does it start, when we talk about economic mobility, what are those buckets that we have to look at first? Is it housing? Is it education? Is it workforce development, health and wellness? What do you think? Where do we start?
Well, everything starts at home. We know that, unfortunately, children are, their success rate is determined by the zip code that they live in. We know that...
Should we still be saying that? 'Cause
no. That's why it's unfortunate. The other component is that we're not looking at housing holistically, because housing does determine health, is a health determinant. Who you see and how you interact and how things are designed is also a health determinant. For small business owners like myself, if you're not able to live and work in the same space, if you're not able to sell where you live or work where you live, or create with people who live with you, that creates inequity. When you look at communities such as, let's just say, Silicon Valley as an example, and that's a whole different conversation about what does that actually mean. But the interesting thing about places like that, and the places that Atlanta used to be when you're talking about equitable communities, is that these individuals became what we consider successful because they lived next to other people who were creatives.
Exactly.
Right? And so you had the tinkerer next to you in that garage. You had this other tinkerer next to you in this garage, and they created billion-dollar companies. We are literally creating spaces where that does not exist.
Hold your point, because when we come back, we're going to talk about community, because if a community is forever changing or forever evolving, then you're saying that's part of the problem.
Yes.
Hold that. Courtney, when no one talked about housing as that top tier, that place to begin when we talk about how do we begin to find solutions, do you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I believe that housing is an incredibly important building block of a healthy whole community, but it's not the only one, right? You need housing, you need transportation options, you need food options, you need jobs that pay living wages, and so I do believe that we are trying to make an attempt to think about how we really undo a lot of what has happened over time in the city. It's important to realize that whatever Atlanta is or whatever Atlanta isn't, it didn't happen by accident. It happened by intention. And so when we think about the redlining that was done to African American communities, when we think about how expressways divided people intentionally, and then those communities were starved of resources, of amenities, and then we find ourselves in a place where we're in one of the most segregated cities in America. There, my friend Kamal is in the audience here.
I know.
And he will tell you that, there are only 2 high schools in the city of Atlanta with white children in them. So let's pause and think about that. That is an intentional design. It's nobody in this room's fault, but the city was literally designed to segregate folks, and that has had severe implications on housing, on education, on our ability to work our way up the economic ladder. And so when we think about those solutions, we have to think about them comprehensively, but we also have to be honest about the system isn't broken. The system is doing what it's supposed to do. And so we've got to deconstruct
Is it too late to
that system.
undo it? When
No,
you talk about
it's never too
undo it,
late.
how do you undo it?
Yeah, so I think I think it goes back to the truth and hope that is Atlanta, right? And so we can talk about those negative stats, but Atlanta also has more black businesses that are owned by African Americans per capita than any other city in America. We've got more black millionaires than any other city in America, and those are the efforts of folks like Maynard Jackson, right? And so that's the hopeful part, right? So if there's any city in America that can get it right, I think we have a history, a culture. We have had leadership that has highlighted the way of what's possible. We just have to have the courage to follow through.
All right. Danji, housing, other areas, but where do you have to begin if we're going to turn this around?
So it's interesting. I believe that community sits at the intersection of all of those things. It can be from housing, and obviously for me, I'm an advocate for education. It can be from health and all the other things that we just discussed. But the interesting point to me is that if you do not have adequate education, then you can't have access to health, right? You do not have access to food opportunities that are healthy for our children in particular. You cannot afford the housing options that are in the city of Atlanta. So I believe that one of the important things, all of them have to work in concert with one another. But I do think that for the population that I have the honor to support by way of my work with raising expectations, is by way of education.
The kids that the youth that you all work with, their households, what's the average in terms of the economic, the financial stability of these households?
So primarily, most of our children come from households that make less than $20,000 a year. And that's in a household that has up to 4 people in the household. So that in and of itself underscores the fact that the work that she's doing as it relates to affordable housing is very important. The work that Mayor Dickens and his office is doing is very important because it creates an opportunity for our kids and our families to stay in place as communities are changing and evolving. I'll give you an example. Because we're geographically based in terms of our support and have been since 2004, we've been doing the work. This is our 28th year of service, leading into our 29th in August, but we've been on the West Side since 2004. As a consequence, we've had the ability to build some lifelong relationships with our parents and families that we served. So when opportunities come down the pipeline from West Side Future Foundation, an example, and they have a Home on the West Side program, which is supported by way of some of the city dollars, as well as some of the private foundations in the city of Atlanta, we're able to pathway our families into those options.
But they're able to stay in the community.
They can stay in the community, absolutely.
Because this goes back to what you were talking about. Right. The old Atlanta way was everything was community based. You worked with this person, your dentist lived in your neighborhood, the pharmacy was in the neighborhood, whatever. But neighborhoods are changing.
Right.
So is that going to be a hindrance? Can we still have this community focused economic sort of template that every neighborhood can thrive?
We can. Echoing what everyone has said here and what Courtney has said, Atlanta is probably, I think, one of the greatest places to be able to do that. I will say, though, I grew up within that transition piece. So even though we had everything we needed in certain communities, I was part of the busing system, which meant that I had to take 2 school buses to get to school and take 2 school buses back home. So while that provided opportunity, that's unacceptable. And we were all educated in our family. So it was the ability to live near options that were quality options that we could get through public education. That was not the case. It's similar now without busing, it just looks a little different. And so what great mayors like Mayor Maynard Jackson, what these legacies provided us was, I think, a blueprint that was sustainable in one way, but that probably in some ways should change. in the sense that procurement, as an example, for small businesses and housing developers, a lot of cities, and I think Atlanta used to do that, I don't know how procurement is now, but I am considered a minority-owned business, not a woman-owned business. White women are typically considered a minority and a woman-owned business. What does that mean? That means that I'm not able to participate in the future of communities based off the experiences that I had as a woman of color growing up here, so that other women can see the work that I'm doing and hopefully be inspired. That means that I'm stuck participating in a certain community versus that inclusivity that you are referring to. And so I think we have to look holistically again at the participation of both city government, which I believe they're doing a lot more now than before, after Maynard, but before now. We have to look at also how that fits within the conversations of what does it mean to have quality communities at affordable prices.
I want to take a moment and educate folks about the work that you all do, because you work with, and we don't use the word tiny, but more micro living or containers, that whole area. You see that as being a crucial part of solving or being part of the solution as it relates to affordable housing. But are you able to offer your containers? Are you up against competition that is bigger?
Well, that's part of the competition, is procurement problem. but yes, and part of it is just reimagining what it means to be here in Atlanta, reimagining space. The myth is that you can't create affordability in urban environments. What we're saying is that's not correct, because we are reimagining spaces that we have, whether they're backyards, as accessory dwelling units. But how does that affect policy? How does that affect what it means to gentrify a community? And what I mean by that is I see myself as both a gentrifier, but also someone that hopes to inspire people to be able to gentrify their own communities. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that people who should get a return on their investment aren't getting that return. And so I would say that we have, unfortunately, too many gatekeepers that are gentrifiers, but not all gentrifiers are gatekeepers. And I think that looking at that dynamic—
Who are the gatekeepers?
So the gatekeepers come in various different ways. Real estate developers that have been here for a very long time, right?
Okay.
Where legacies of those developers did not build the companies, they inherited it. So the understanding of how to build economic and generational wealth is different when you've been given that opportunity versus when you've actually created the business. So people who are gatekeeping the opportunity for inclusivity and gatekeeping the opportunity for affordability usually are doing that on the 14th floor or behind their home that's not in the city limits of Atlanta, or in some larger economic development conversation on the body politic. What I'm hopeful and interested in is how do we inspire our kids and our young people to be able to build their own tables to make those kinds of decisions for their own communities. That takes resources, that takes checks, that takes dollars, it takes education, but it takes a place to be able to live, to be able to make that change. And so what we're saying is we build small spaces for large impact, but in order for that to work, we have to have the workforce opportunities there for people to be able to participate in that. We have to have the places for us to build and inspire to participate in that. We have to create what I call a legacy of makers and builders to control the supply chain of equitable community development so that they're not depending on someone who's not from here, or those that aren't from here who have had to leave because they couldn't afford where they're from, to also participate in that inclusivity. So let's be clear. It just came out that California, the entire state, the median income is not now the median home price is $900,000. That scares me.
$900,000?
$900,000 for the entire state. Atlanta metro area, last time I checked, was I believe $400,000. Okay, so I don't think enough people know that it could take one pothole to be in poverty in this city, right? It only takes one discretionary issue to not have a home. And so we've got to figure out how do we coalesce all of these conversations from the city of Atlanta, who's doing, I think, great work, and Courtney and I were just talking about this, and progression of affordable housing, but then you have the county, they're in charge of the property taxes. So then you have the sheriff department that's in charge of the evictions. Then you have investors who have that generational wealth we're talking about in Atlanta, as far as people of color, but they're investing in the things you see that have been thrown out in the street versus investing in housing. So we really need to define what it means to be equitable and inclusive and understand how all of these things are connected.
And we should note, we recently had, I think, 2 segments where we looked at here and we talk about Atlanta Metro, more than 19,000 rental properties were owned by just 3 large investor.
That's correct.
Corporate, that is
That's
19,000.
It's 33% of the entire single-family vacant stock in the city.
It's insane.
I also want to note that when we first came up with the idea for this segment, we reached out to Mayor Dickens' office. He really wanted to be here. He had a conflict with the airport, so he was willing to be a part of this conversation. Hopefully we'll get him back for another conversation. But Courtney, as it relates to policy, as Winona was talking about, is that where we have to begin too? For someone like her, a small business like her, are you seeing some reasons to change some policies as it relates to procurement or that whole process?
Well, I think we got to do a few things. I think we have to continue to build upon our minority business program, which is the class of the entire world, really, when it comes to procurement and investing in small businesses and investing in women and minorities. 36 cents of every dollar that the city of Atlanta spends is spent with a minority. 40 cents now, 39 cents to be exact, in the world's busiest and most efficient airport is spent with minorities. And so those numbers just need to keep growing and growing and growing. And what we have to do, though, is take somebody who's, at $1 million company and get them to 5, and then take the person at 5 and get them to 50, and then go from 50 till they graduate out of the program. And so that's going to take investments from the city to help people bond at a larger capacity. They need customers, and so they need a check, right? And so the city is well positioned to do that. And so you'll see we're not gonna make news now, but we'll make some news later. But you'll see us making.
You can make the news now.
No, we'll be back. If you have us back, we'll make some news.
Right.
But folks, you will see us making sizable investments, particularly in people who are investing in our young folks, particularly folks who are doing affordable housing, particularly folks who are just interested in building community. You will see the city make larger and larger investments in those places. And we just closed out Year to Youth that touched 30,000 young people, raised $30 million, invested $22 million in early childhood education, a whole host of activities for our young folks. And so you'll see more and more of that.
Let me ask you this before I get to Tangi. You were a young person. How did you see Atlanta was a place that you could thrive? And I know you were surrounded by you had a lot of mentors. I know people say it was hard raising Courtney. And your incredible mother as well. Did you see yourself being able to thrive here as a young person?
Yeah, absolutely, I did. Because again, I think that's the power of the city of Atlanta. We get to know our heroes in a very real way. I mean, John Lewis wasn't a fictional character for us. I mean, he was literally in our history books, on TV, and in the community at the same time. We get to love folks like Ambassador Andrew Young, folks like Mayor Shirley Franklin, Maynard Jackson. I mean, I can go down the list, so on and so forth. And because of those examples, because I got to see, incredible folks who looked like me, who were doing incredible work, it was awe-inspiring.
So Tangi, how do we meet the kids, not like who didn't have the opportunity that Courtney had? Because that's the future as well. And often we talk about we want kids who want to do this, but there's a population of kids who really need to be able to see what Courtney just talked about.
Absolutely.
Because those are the ones I think who get left out of the conversation. Those are the ones you're trying to reach as well.
Absolutely. So with intentionality, raising expectations supports kids who are not necessarily top 10% of their class. And you mentioned earlier about the need of interfacing kids with real estate development so they understand what's going on around them. It's interesting that you noted that, because we do have an initiative in partnership with Stockbridge, which has a local office here in Atlanta, to create what is called a REAP program. It's a real estate enrichment program where kids are learning about commercial real estate, how to value, identify the highest and best usage for a property. As a matter of fact, their project this year, we're focusing on Pittsburgh Yards. So it's about making certain that kids have the vocabulary and the exposure points to these industries and understand how their voice is actually valuable, right? And they deserve to be at the table. In addition to that, I think that the dollars that we've been given from raising expectations from the city has been immeasurable. We work with intentionality with kids who have concurrent social emotional needs, and that's hard work, Rose.
Yes.
I think that everybody can look at the amount of educators who are leaving the field to edify the fact that this is very difficult work. As a matter of fact, we joke around the office and we say, you know, our kids were behind before COVID, and clearly COVID had a negative impact on them. But I feel like when the eclipse happened, like there was some alien above, like literally downloaded some kind of DNA pad, because they just are just stage left right now. Yeah. So with that being said, with that being said, and in spite of all that, they are so brilliant. They want to be a part of the conversation. And so when you have leadership and policy that has more of a global lens about how can we bring our community partners to the table to help rectify this issue, I think that's where we find our best benefit. So when the mayor talks about Atlanta being a group project, our role at raising expectations is to make certain that our kids that come from the city of Atlanta have an opportunity to dwell in these buildings that are in the city of Atlanta by way of education. So I think these conversations are very fruitful in closing that gap that Courtney mentioned earlier.
Before we go to break, and we pause for a moment and think about this, because this also comes from a listener. It says, we still have to address issues from the 80s and 90s with drug abuse, the crack epidemic, and everything else. So I want to talk about, because you mentioned how we got here. So when we come back, I want to talk about then how can we help that generation, because that's a part of how we moving forward. So stay with us, Coffee Conversations. We'll continue in just a moment.
Georgia has the fastest growing film industry in the nation. Get an inside look on WABE's The Boom, a podcast dedicated to film and TV in Atlanta.
I'm Jewel Wicker, host of The Boom. Every episode, I'll tell you what's happening in the industry and interview folks shaping Atlanta's film and television community.
Listen now on wabe.org/theboom or your favorite podcast platform.
College sports is contending with billion-dollar settlements, the growth of women's sports, and betting. A tall order for any NCAA president, but Charlie Baker says he's game for it. On All Things Considered from NPR News. This afternoon at 4 on 90.1 WABE.
And Closer Look continues from Omni Coffee and Eggs. This is our monthly coffee conversation with Rose Scott. And before we went to break, and I asked about in terms of, okay, Atlanta is all these great things that we're talking about, right? But we have to address some things that are still impacting our community. I have a good friend whose mother is still dealing with, substance abuse from the 80s. Can this city still help address some of these issues of the past in order to continue moving forward for these generations that are still impacted by that? Winona?
Oh, I think so. One of the beautiful things about Atlanta is that it's had a history of seeing the impossible and seeing things that aren't there. And so, we live in West End, and we've seen a lot of changes in West End, but we still see a lot of people that have been there and deal with some of the issues that you just mentioned. And what you find when you actually engage your neighbors is that they have a lot of gifts and talents that have yet to be materialized and funded and resourced. And so, I was talking with one of our neighbors that walked by, and he said, we have a garden. He said, what do we do about the fact that people like me who've been here for so long, have high blood pressure, all of the stresses, still trying to survive. We have McDonald's, and I said, well, growing your food is pretty neat. In fact, most of the people that I know who are from here or have been here for a while know how to do that. But where are the resources? And are we housing affordably urban farmers? Are we housing affordably people who actually can professionally support those with substance needs? The people who provide the services can't afford to live near the people who need them, and the people who need them can afford to live near the services that they could get to help them with their problem.
So again, it's going back to building up the community or making sure the community has that you should be able to walk to everything that you need in your community. Courtney, can we do that?
So I think we can do as much as we have the will and the courage to do. And I think that history has borne that out. The city of Atlanta specifically can't do it alone, though, right? So we do need our partners at Fulton County, at the state level. We need our partners at the federal government to lend resources, lend time, talent, and treasure to helping us solve many of these the issues that folks face, particularly as it relates to challenges of healthcare, which the city, it's really the county's responsibility.
Well, and we don't have time for this, but when you look at something like the city jail, which time and time, all these reports say, listen, nearly 40%, if not more, of these folks should not be incarcerated. They need resources to help them. So you've got the county, you've got the city, then you've got the court system. So again, going back to the holistic, I'm going to ask you as a government official, why is it so challenging to get everybody in the same room to try to figure out a solution for something like the city jail?
Well, the county jail. Yes. Oh, county. Nah. I will say that
it's like Uno. If you want to pass, you can.
No, I'm not going to pass. Here's what I'll say. I will say that people show up at City Hall with all sorts of issues, and that's in part because I think over time, City Hall has been a place where folks can come together and redress grievances very easily. I mean, you can walk around. If you just walk in City Hall, you're going to run into somebody, whether it's a city council member, you'll see the mayor, and so it's that kind of open place. Even when folks are coming down to Yale, that's fine. We absorb that too and try to act on it. But City Hall is not the be-all, end-all for the issues that we face. Like if you look at a county commission meeting, right, they're empty. There's no one sitting in there. And so if you are concerned about healthcare in the county, you need to be at that county commission meeting. If you are concerned about evictions, if you are concerned about how many folks are incarcerated inside of the county jail, that's both the courts and the folks in the jail.
But there are some folks who show up, because I watch those 2-3 hour meetings sometimes because they can be very entertaining. I'll leave it at that. So there are some folks. So whether it's 100 people show up or 2 people show up about an issue, it's an issue. I agree entirely. I don't think that the level of scrutiny that our city council faces or that the mayor faces comes close to, I don't think the level of scrutiny that we get at City Hall, it is by far and away greater than what the county experiences. And what that creates, though, democracy dies in darkness, right? To be cliche about it. What it creates is you got a whole lot of folks, candidly, making decisions that are not in the best interest of their constituents. And so 1 or 2, sure, a city council meeting, there are 100 folks down there every single day, every single Monday. Well, and you had 17,000 comments about the Public Safety Training Center. So I'm just saying.
No, and we welcome them all, and we welcome them all. And the point I'm making is that ultimately we need more folks to lay eyes, ears, and lend their voices to these other branches of government to address many of the issues.
Engagement. You want more engagement.
Oh, absolutely.
Tanj, I'll give you the last word in terms of, addressing all the issues for community. If the community is supposed to thrive, how do we get it done?
So I celebrate the fact that Atlanta is the kind of place where opportunity is always there. So Raising Expectations was founded by 2 people who are not from Atlanta, but we did not go to an HBCU. I'm not Greek, Maria is Greek. And so normally people say, well, you have to be from Atlanta or you have to have some kind of Atlanta roots to make things happen. We're just regular smuggler people who wanted to do something in our community, and 28 years later, we're still here. So with regards to engagement, to talk about what Courtney just shared with regards to where the responsibility lies, if we are to talk about community and we want to make sure that that community voice is in that dialogue, that means we have to educate them about it. Small things from a policy perspective can be done. An example right now, civics is not being taught. Our kids do not understand how bills become law.
But there's some adults who think Judge Judy's on the Supreme Court.
Exactly,
so I'm just saying.
But I'm saying when you talk about democracy dies in the darkness, also it could be attributed to ignorance. So we need to have hard conversations with our public school systems about how do we re-engage our kids into learning about civics so that they can be an informed voice to participate in these important discussions.
Real quick question. I just want a yes or no to this question. Do you think that this city can be successful in making gentrification racially sustainable and just? That's from a listener.
It has
Yes or
to.
no? Has to?
If there's no other place that can get it done, it's going to be Atlanta. It has to happen.
Winona?
Of course.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Well, go do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, ma'am.
I need the check first, Rose.
Oh, yeah.
I need the check first.
Need that check first. This is a conversation that came from listeners really wanting to know more. This is what we do. This is why we do it. So, Winona, Courtney, Tangi, thank you all for being here. Thank you, everyone in the office for being, and in the audience for being here. Important conversation. I feel like we need to have a part 2, right?
Yes.
Should we come back here?
Yes.
All right. Well, that is it for this special live edition of Coffee Conversations in partnership with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. I want to thank everyone here at Omni Coffee and Eggs. Thank you so much. The incredible WABE staff, marketing, membership, digital, the guy that works at the front desk, everybody. Thank you so much. This is Closer Look. I'm Rose Scott.